Hey, welcome to the third video of Section 2 Formula Building. This video is all about array versus single cell functions. Now, the single cell functions would be functions that the result would be in a single cell. That's what we've basically seen up until here. You put in your function, you do your calculation, and the result stays within that cell. Array functions actually are able to have multiple rows and or columns as the result. So you'll have your function, push enter, and it'll actually have an array as result, also known as spill, go underneath it or to the side of that function, which is our third term, the array of result, which is where the additional cells outside of the formula go and, well, spill out of the function. So let's take a look at some examples. Down here, we're starting with some single cell functions. So here is a VLOOKUP. It's looking up this name on this table up here. We're then saying we want the range and the index 3, so that would bring us to the employee ID. It is false, so it is a true match. And we get this answer right here because it found the name and gave us the employee ID. Next, this one just is highlighting the F4, one cell, and the result is in 1. Now, concatenate here is a way to be able to take the first name, some text, and the last name, which is the employee ID, and have it all in one cell. So the arguments of this are multiple things, 2 cell references and some strings. The result is still in one cell, and so we would call this the single or regular function. And finally, the sum, which will take the employee IDs and basically combine them. And I know that doesn't really make sense, that's not really what those numbers are for, but they are numbers, and this is a single function example. So we'll do it. I know it's silly that we're adding the employee IDs. So those are some single function examples. Next, we're going to look at some array functions. The first one is one we haven't looked at, called split. And let's remove the apostrophe. Looking at this, first is the text that you want, which is this name, Ida Shelton. And then you have a delimiter, and that is what you are looking for to split. So the delimiter would basically be what the character is, and it'll remove that character and then split it. You also have some extra stuff like remove empty text, split by each, but I'm just going to use this here, push enter, and you can see the first name is here in this cell, but the last name is here because it got split, and it is the spill or the result range. Now I'm pushing the delete button, and you see it kind of hopefully is going like blinking, and you can't delete the spill just like that. You'd have to actually delete this function to have this be removed. Let's look at another one. XLOOKUP is one that can have a result range that is multiple. So it is an array. It can also be a single function. So if you push enter, we get the email and the spill over here. Now, one thing to note is, let's say that you wanted to edit it or do something to it. If you put a 9 or change it, you can see that we get a ref error, and it says it can't be expanded because it would overwrite data here. So the big rule to know is that with array formulas, it will never remove text that is already in there. So if you get the ref error, go in by clicking it and see what it's saying, because it'll tell you exactly where the error is going to. Delete it, and then now it'll work. So let's look at the last one here. This is a filter function. Filter works just like the filtering up here, other than you have to provide the range and what the condition is. So my condition for this example is that we're not including the email above here. So if I have this here, push enter, now I have the entire table up here, other than the first one right here, or excuse me, this one, which right here, which is the first employee ID. Now, in this, the same thing happens. If you click in here and you're like, oh, I want to change, it's actually nada, the email's different. you can see the ref error happens. And if you click in, then it'll again show you where it is. So with ones like this, where there's a lot longer of text, it's very helpful to be able to go in and see what the issue is. It's also important to know if you have something that is an array formula, and those who are working on it, because otherwise if you try to type into something and then everything disappears, that could startle someone. So we have these arrays as examples, and looking back at we talked about order and nesting functions. A lot of that comes into play here, and a new thing will be, I guess, discovered or explained. If you use array and you use single functions, you have to be careful, because sometimes they actually don't work the way you think. Let's say that we wanted to uppercase this. So you wanted the name but uppercase, and you just put uppercase here, enter. It worked, but there's no last name. So, and you want the last name too. Well, what's going on? This here is an array. It gets expanded, but then the upper only sees what's in that cell, and it is not an array. Thus, what it does is it just takes the single cell, and that's it. So in this case, the order does matter, where you actually would have to put upper here and use this, and then split it. And there we have the result that we were looking for. So again, it's important to know what kind of functions you have in order to make sure that the result is the one that you want. The single functions result will be single. So one other thing to take a look at here is that if you have something like this and for whatever reason the uppercase needs to be here, there is another way you can do it. So while we do that again, we miss that there. You can actually put something called an array formula. And here, let's go back. The array formula basically enables the display value returned from the array in multiple rows and columns. So a fancy way to basically say you are turning a non-array function, or these regular function like upper, into an array. So if I push enter, we get that same result there. So similarly here on the filter, if we did the upper and then push enter, it would turn into this. If we did the array formula, then we'd have the whole result here. Now, another thing to note is that sometimes you have it in different spots, and as long as you have it in the array formula, it would work. Like if you wanted this in the result here, that would still work. Just again, with the array, that is now switching it so that it's not a single function anymore, but an array. The other thing to note too is there are some array functions that work a little bit differently. So in this case, if we did the same thing, and hopefully this doesn't confuse you more, but there are some functions like filter where if you do an uppercase on a range like this, and I'm just going to copy this for a second. So it's upper this range, it'll do the same exact thing, and it will work. Now, if I just took the upper, like I did, you're going to get this error because it needs to be an array formula. And what's going on is that this filter is an array, and it'll actually look at everything in that filtered view and display it as the upper. So the easiest way to say this is that the filter function has that functionality of making it an array formula. So that overrides the uppercase single cell. So I know that's not super helpful for all of them. Might be more helpful to say, if you know it's a single cell, and needs to be an array formula, just use the array formula over it too, because that's going to work always. Sometimes it'll work without it. So just an FYI, sometimes it will. You just have to kind of know the formulas you're working with a little more and, troubleshoot as you have errors or if it just works. Here, just to end, let's do a couple of tips. And I've said it a couple times. If and when you get errors, refs, or anything else like that, read it. See what it says, because especially with the ref, you can just look and it says, well, it's not going to be expanded because of D35. go to D35, delete it, and you should be good to go. Similarly, if you have, multiple things like that, well, it says D35, delete it. If it's still happening, now it's D38, delete it, and there you go. And that also might be one that you're like, well, it looks like I can technically, why is that happening? And if you look at the range, it actually goes down 3 more columns of empty. So this does take the empty cells. So sometimes it's simple like that, and other times you might have to dig into it a little bit further as to why that is happening. Tip 2 is you can use the control, and if you're on Mac, it's also control. I think it's actually spelled out at least on my keyboard. And then the tilde, you can see formulas. So all of these are formulas, and that can be helpful to know, well, where is this originating from? Especially if you have a larger filter or, array formula. It's very helpful to be able to know. Then, of course, you just push it. Again, it's a toggle, and then it's off. Last is you can also conditional formatting like above here. So it'll use this is formula that we see over here in these texts. And you can actually use that with the cell references and basically highlight if it is a formula or not. So again, we'll look a little bit deeper into these conditional formatting, but you can basically say, if this is a formula, highlight it purple, or I guess that's more of a pink. And if I just switch this to B, and this is B, then you can expand the array of it to B. Just again, the biggest thing is that your rule, has to be the first cell in your range in order for it to highlight correctly. So anyway, that's another one. We'll look more into conditional formatting, but in case you were wanting a way to highlight any formula, that's a great way to do it. So hopefully this helps. I know we're starting to get a little bit deeper into these. So, as always, experiment with your functions and formulas. Know that a lot of times stuff isn't going to work how you think it is. And, hopefully this will help find a potential spot of why it's not working. If you're getting a single when you think it's supposed to be an array, chances are you need the array formula. If you, get errors, look at the error messages. Again, there's also online. You can take a look at your problem or, go to some help forums. There's a lot of different ways. Leave a comment here and, hopefully someone can help you. I'll try to, no promises, but, you can see if I, if I can. Anyway, rambling here. So we'll see you in the next video where we will look more into cell referencing. See you in the next one.